What's up, guys? Welcome back to a new episode of Out of the Park Baseball 26, where we are rebuilding the Pittsburgh Pirates, and we're joining you today from July 11th, 2029. Last we left off, we had simulated in the first year player draft up until our pick. We are on the clock at number 29 in the first round. And I think we've arrived at a decision. We have the player in mind that we're going to take here. So I really appreciate any feedback we got in the last episode. There were a couple of comments kind of voicing opinions for certain players, and I tend to agree with those comments as well. I've sort of landed on the player that I want to take here. But the plan for today's episode, I guess taking a little bit of a step back before we get started, is going to be to handle the entirety of the first year player draft. Obviously, we'll do the first few rounds on camera. I will hop off recording to kind of deliberate and then come back to you with a decision through the first 4 or 5 rounds, and then I'll do the rest off camera. We'll recap at the end. We'll then go through the All-Star break here and kind of see all the news that emerges around this time. And I'll review sort of all the minor league promotions we made as well, kind of like which guys are taking jumps to higher levels, and kind of spotlight their performance year to date. And I don't know how long all of that is going to take. If it ends up running long, we may not get to the trade deadline. I'll kind of just play it by ear. It's possible we can advance through the remainder of July together and potentially make some deadline deals. I have a couple of transactions that I have eyed based on players on the trade market that I think we can get away with without paying too much of a steep price. But that's sort of the the game plan I have written down here. Let's turn our attention back to the future, though. Let's go back to the draft here. We had taken a look at a lot of guys in the previous episode. There are, not as many good position players available in this draft, at least, here where we sit on the clock. I think there are a couple of favorable options on the position player front. There are really just 2 guys who I like. I like David Stiltner. He's a 17-year-old switch hitting outfielder who you think is decent defender. You like that he bats switch. He's good from the left side against a right-handed pitching. All very solid, good speed, well-rounded bat, really far away. I don't think I'm comfortable taking him here. He's committed to Vandy, so he's definitely a good prospect, but I don't think I am in love with him. There are, other guys available here like Russ Meshke. Meshke, I keep struggling with that one, but Russ Meshke, who looks also pretty well-rounded, and he's not projected to go until later in the draft, so I think there's a chance he's available with our next pick. So we're gonna hold off on him here. I think we're really down between 2 pitchers. The high school arm, Joaquin Cruseda, is really high upside, of course, throws upper 90s, mid to upper 90s, good stamina, good baseball IQ. The control could be, if that were to regress down to a 40, then you're looking at kind of reliever risk, but he's got tremendously loud stuff and good movement on his pitches. I do like him quite a lot, but I don't think we're going to go with him either. This should be no surprise, but we're going to take Tony Granger. This is where I was heavily leaning in the last episode, that we kind of looked at the, we had first impressions, and I still am pretty in love with Tony Granger, just because you love the 5-pitch mix. Everything is pretty far along. He's got slightly plus control, just a little above average at 55 potential there. And we think he can contribute right away. So, there's no guarantee our starting rotation is the same as it is today. In just a couple of years, we have obviously Dan Beebe and Jared Jones locked on guaranteed deals, but Hunter Green has an opt-out after his first 2 seasons, so it's possible he would, leave us, and then we would be looking to plug that hole, along with, the Burrows spot will likely become available in the next year or 2 as well. So I think we need to get another, good pitcher in our system. It never hurts to have depth. So I've landed on Tony Granger as that guy, and he can step in right away and start contributing at A ball and possibly even high A. This season, we'll have to decide where we want to put him, but that's going to be where we're going to go. So we're going to go ahead and make that choice here. He's number 3 in the eyes of Pipeline, so definitely a good sign, and he's under slot by quite a bit. Also helpful for our trade deadline pursuits. So maybe, it just depends who's on the clock in the second round. Maybe we overslot that pick, and this helps us there, and then we're kind of, net zero on the draft budget. But it just opens up a lot more flexibility for us further along. And then if we want to save money, that's also good too, because we can, maybe take on more salary at the deadline. But let's get this thing kicked off. Tony Granger is going to be our pick here at 29 out of Rutgers. So keeping him in the Northeast, welcome to Pittsburgh, buddy. We're going to meet his demand of 1.4. And there we go. Tony Granger joins our org. So let's go ahead and advance to our next pick here. I will not review all the prospects on camera. It does look like Crusada goes, so that's unfortunate. I was kind of hoping he would stick around, but Meshke is still here, so we like that. A lot of the closers have gone, it looks like. Let's try to find where our guys went. Stiltner goes to the Yankees, just 6 picks after us. Scott Guile we had looked at as a supplemental pick. There are a couple of college players. Keon Johnson goes to the Guardians as a supplemental pick. And there he goes. Crusada goes to the Angels at the top of the second round. Tough break. We couldn't get both. I was holding out hope maybe he would slide back around to us on our pick here, but it doesn't look like that's the case. So we've got a couple of options here, a couple more relievers, it looks like, out of high school. When I'm looking at the top in our pool, we have a first baseman, we have a center fielder. It's going to be hard to pass on Russ here, though, because I think he, profiles as a quality, maybe second baseman, good contact, gap power. I sort of like all of this. He's not tremendously expensive either. But let me sort of survey the options here, and I'll come back to you with a decision shortly. Okay, I think after, much deliberation, we've landed on our guy here where slot value is 1.1. So, going so far under slot in our first pick opens this up a little bit to us. We can go over slot here. I'll show you a couple of players we have considered. The pitching has really sort of dried up, and there are just a ton of closers in this class in general. I'm noticing so many highly rated closers here. I will show Ricky Jones is pretty interesting, although he's a side armor. He's throwing 100 plus fastball slider. He could be very dominant against, he throws right, so this is going to play better against right-handed batters. He looks really dominant. We're not going to take a reliever here, but I'm intrigued by him. And similarly, I'm intrigued by Chris Wilkins, who I think I like the most out of any of these college relievers. He's from University of Alabama with a great personality. Fastball changeup, also going to throw 100 plus. And fastball changeup does play pretty evenly against both sides here. So he looks really good as well. If he lingers a couple more rounds, maybe we come in and swoop him up. But in terms of starting pitching, there's really not too many guys here that I'm obsessed with. There's this guy, Aaron Harmon, who's 6'9", who's definitely just a big unit. But he's kind of just average across the board. I'm not really super in love with the 20 control starting point. There is a left-handed pitcher down here, though, who I'm interested in a little bit. It is not this guy. It is Bryce Redden. 6'1", 175, throws low to mid 90s, but you like the stamina and the hold runners, and the slightly plus control looks pretty good. He's probably the pitcher I would favor the most out of this group of starters who remain. He wants 2.2 though, so he's kind of a little bit expensive, and considering we went pitcher in the first round, I don't think we're likely to go pitcher here. Maybe we go reliever in the next rounds, but I think we're going to lean batter. And in terms of batters, there are, a good amount of guys here. I sorted through all the 55 grade guys as well. And, there are certainly some options here that I like. Ernesto Cortez is really interesting as a lefty outfielder because he brings that really good personality, but he also has an extreme development risk. just a high schooler. He's pretty far away, but not so far away. He profiles to have good gap power, and he's not going to strike out too much. But you wonder if the base running can ever be there, and if the BABIP progresses, you just wonder if he can get he'll put the ball in play, but you wonder if it'll get down. So maybe in a later round we'll look to grab him and just bet on the personality with our coaching, bringing him along. And there's also a first baseman here I like, Brent Rogers, who's committed to Ohio State, lefty bat. He's 6'11", 220, which is crazy tall. But obviously plus defender at first base. I wonder if he could even he can't really play corner. I was wondering with that arm. But also a good personality and decent speed, just kind of well-rounded. You like that he's durable. I don't think he's this is not the profile of a star player by any means, but he's definitely intriguing at that, with those measurables and that size. And then there are a bunch of other guys down here too. I think Jason Meyer is maybe the last one I'll mention that maybe we'll look for in a later round. I love my center fielders that have speed and good base running, and he looks pretty well-rounded across the board. Bats left, which is cool, and could be a steal later on. But the guy we're going to go with is Russ Meshke. Should be no surprise. I just like that even for a high schooler who just turned 18, he's already got 4 attributes at 30. And he, doesn't know how to play second base, but I think that's likely his home in the long run. I guess it's possible he could come along as a shortstop, but it would be kind of a lot to ask. I think he's a little over slot value, but again, that's no problem because we saved so much money with our first pick. So we're going to bring him on with our pick here and kind of address our infield. So we've gone pitching and infield so far. We'll see if we can attack catcher and outfield later on, but we're going to meet his demand and, just play it safe with 1.4 and welcome in the University of Southern Indiana commit to our system. So Russ Meshke joins. We will now simulate until our next pick. It's a relatively quick turn. There are not too many third-round picks, so we're picking all the way up at 19 in the third round. So let's see who's available to us. And it looks like Cortez is still here, so he'll definitely be someone we'll have to consider. But let me take a deeper look. I'm going to look back at the pitching as well and see who all is available to us. And I'll come back to you with a decision soon. All right, we're back, and we have made a decision. I sort of combed through the pool, and, I feel like this draft is kind of low-key pretty weak. I'm not blown away by the talent of anyone available. If we go to pitching, Chris Wilkins is still here, and he's the reliever. We liked the fastball changeup guy. I kind of think we can risk maybe he makes it another round or two because OSA, we view him as a 60. OSA just views him as a 50. They think he has less movement to tap into, whereas we see differently. So I'm, thinking maybe he'll stick around another round. I don't want to take a reliever right now. I would rather go starter or position player. So we could go Bryce Redden, who we sort of keyed in on earlier, the 18-year-old lefty, 3-pitch guy, good stamina, good personality, seems pretty safe. He would be our most expensive draftee at this point, so I'm kind of turned off on that idea. And I think he's sort of being ballooned by his sacrifice bunt rating being so high. It's sort of misleading his overall, I don't know, a kind of tinfoil hat theory there. He's definitely intriguing and good, but I don't know that I love him. But there is another lefty here who is similarly pretty good, Pedro Alicia, who has a slider primary, so a lefty throwing a slider would be devastating, and he also has a very plus cutter that he can hopefully tap into. Also good movement. He's a lot cheaper. He just wants slot value. The only downside is he has a little less stamina to work with. I think it's a 15-point difference in stamina. But he also has a very high bunt rating as well. He's maybe a little further away if we just directly compare them. Alicia actually has more movement potential, just lacks a little bit of control compared to Redden, but Redden is much further along, and they're both 18, but Redden is such a higher starting point that maybe that makes a big difference. And yeah, you can see the stamina. It's actually a 20-point differential there. But I don't know that we're going to go with either one. I think we're going to go back to the position player well here. And when I look at all the batters available, there's obviously a lot of like very high demand guys here. Like this first baseman, Trey McConnell from Canada, wants $7 million. And while I would love to take him, he is out of our price range. So we're not even going to consider that. There are a couple of infielders here who I somewhat like. There is Riley Ray, who kind of looks similar to the guy we just drafted in Russ Meshke. Decent personality, not the best shortstop, but maybe there's some positional versatility with him with the outfield range. He's just like barely 18 and already somewhat far along. Wants 1.8. I don't know that he's our guy, but I did like him. And there's a catcher down here who I like, Walt Nahara, who just looks like very like typical catcher, well-rounded, good IQ, very steady, I would say. OSA views him as like much better than we do. Granted, they are low accuracy on him, but I think he would be intriguing to just like have at rookie ball for us. So maybe we look to grab him on at a later pick. He wants like 290 right now. But the guy we're gonna go with, we've touched on him before, is Ernesto Cortez. I'm just willing to bet on the personality, and I was sort of running comparisons with him with other players that are available to us, and I think the gap power avoid strikeout combo is where we're gonna go here. Even though the BABIP isn't like tremendously high, like the contact tool does profile as plus, so maybe that turns it around. I'm just like mostly betting on the personality and willing to kind of take a risk here. So he's only 650, and he's like one of the recommended players by our scout. This guy, Bill Montalvo, is somewhat interesting, but I think we have so many outfielders like close to his age. I kind of want somebody younger. I don't want him to clog the pipeline of our system too much. So I'm sort of leaning Cortez here, and I think that's where we're going to go. He's viewed like decently high by pipeline, I think. There's this Aaron Patterson guy still there. Now, Nahara is like viewed very highly by pipeline at 20. But I remember seeing Cortez relatively early here, although the more I keep scrolling, the more that looks like, okay, yeah, he comes in at 75, so still decently high. But we're going to take him. I like that he bats left, and he's under slot again, so we're saving more money. So we're going to meet his demand of $650K. And now we have addressed, up the middle defense and starting pitching so far. So let's keep moving here to our next pick, and let's see if I'm curious if the pitcher is still on the board. I would be surprised if he is. Oh, he is. Chris Wilkins is still here, so we'll have to, consider that heavily. I think he could make it to the majors like relatively quick. I'm pretty sure he could play at like high A immediately. Well, no, we would probably start him out at A ball. But let me, run through this. I'll try to decide. It looks like our scout has us favoring pitching, and then also Jason Meyer, who we like him as well. But I'll come back to you in a bit once I figure out what we're going to do. And sitting here in the fourth round, there are, a couple of different ways we could go with this. I'll show some players who I have considered and then ultimately show you who I'm going to take. But from a batting perspective, it's really tempting to go for Brent Rogers, the 6'11" first baseman, like huge mountain of a man. I don't know that he's going to make it around to us with our next pick. But like his personality, like his defense, obviously he looks like a capable hitter, but OSA sees him with a little more power than we do. So we're kind of wondering who is correct there. But it just, 17 would really consider bringing him on. He's probably my favorite, but we're not going to take him. Other guys here, Jason Meyer, Riley Ray, are both still available to us, the outfielder and the shortstop we sort of looked at. And so is Walt Nahara, the catcher. So there's still like four, I would consider high-tier position players available to us. Mario Rodriguez is also interesting as well. He just kind of lacks a little bit of power, but you think he could be a somewhat capable defender at second base. But we're not going to go position player. We're going to go pitcher. And we're not going to go with Chris Wilkins either, even though, he obviously looks very awesome and can be fast-tracked, hopefully, to the majors. We're not there yet with him. We're not going to go reliever here. We're going to dip down to a high school pitcher, and it's going to be this guy, Angel Rico. He's an 18-year-old lefty. I like that he has 60 control potential. He seems to be, pretty capable and steady. I just want to come out of this with one more, pretty good pitching prospect, and I kind of just like him best out of all the options available to us. And he's from IMG, obviously, so he's a future, pro athlete. I didn't really love any of the other starters available. You can see he kind of comes in like in this 50 range here. There are some like more college guys here, but I am sort of like wanting something a little more developmental. And, Robbie Williams wants way too much money. He wants $5 million. All these guys at the top, I guess you could compare him to Carlos Mateo here, who doesn't quite have the control. He's like a little just kind of weird. I don't love this. It's it doesn't line up with what, usually ground ballers are like, the good homer guys, and he doesn't really have the control to go with it. I think Rico is a little more balanced across the board and, obviously viewed like insanely by OSA, which is like per usual. They tend to overvalue like everyone. But we're going to go for him. He's also ranked pretty highly in Pipeline's eyes. He's number 28. So I think it's good value for us. He just wants slot, so he's going to want $600K, which is fine with us. We've, underslotted two of our picks up to this point. So we're going to meet his demand here and then see what position players are available to us with our next pick here to close out the on-camera drafting. So let's go ahead and take a look. Oh, it looks like the first baseman, Brent Rogers, is still available, so we can potentially overslot him here. He only wants $700K, which is awesome to see. Let's take a look at pitching to see if Wilkins is still here. Wilkins goes, so that's unfortunate. We miss out on the reliever. Let's try to see where he went. He went to Texas here just, a couple of picks before we made it back on the clock. I think I also saw... who else here? Riley Ray went to Vegas at pick 5.8. So also a tough break there. We had already taken a shortstop though, so I don't totally mind it. It looks like the catcher, Jason Meyer, also goes to Boston. So, we already took an outfielder and a shortstop, like I mentioned. So those were kind of like luxury picks we were eyeing. It seems like Nahara, the catcher, is still available, but I think this is going to be where we go with Brent Rogers, the, huge first base prospect. If I just go here, yeah, it looks like he's our top guy. I think we may even just make this one on camera, guys, because I'm pretty well familiar with the names at this point, based on like looking at everyone off camera. So Nahara is still here. I think there's a chance he makes it around to us again because there are a couple of other catchers like ahead of him in the pecking order. So let's go Brent Rogers. Let's bring in the exciting 6'11" first baseman. He'll just kind of be a cool part of our lore in the system. I'm like happy to bring him on at $700K. We can definitely afford it. So we're going to welcome in the Ohio State commit. Where's he from? He's from New Jersey, so also staying, relatively in the Northeast. So welcome in Brent Rogers. We're going to meet his demand of $700K, and now we will see if the catcher is on the clock for us with our next selection here. And it's possible he would still be here. Looks like Jason Colson and Billy Quarles are here. He is. Walt Nahara is still here, but I'm going to run through the rest of the draft off camera, sort of at my own leisure. These are the first picks we've made. I'm pretty happy with our first two, and then we'll kind of see how everyone else turns out. It's sort of like wild cardy. But I'll loop back around once we're done, and we can review everything together as a group. All right, y'all, we have finally wrapped up here. The drafts go pretty long these days. I feel like it takes forever to get through everything, but last we left off, we had taken the first baseman, Brent Rogers, And we came back in the 6th round and grabbed Walt Nahara. I just felt like it would be good to bring another young catcher into our system. Why not have some competition for guys like Ruiz and Waldron? Really liked everything, just the good balance across the board. He's not a plus defender, but OSA sees him very differently than we do. So curious to see who is right in the end, but happy to bring him on. From there, we actually got, I think, a couple of steals. We ended up, I guess our strategy was to start paying guys in the later rounds. We actually brought on some kind of pricey guys here in rounds like 8 through 12. Guys that were asking for overslot value that kind of slipped past the first few rounds. We used our savings to go back after them there. But not for this next guy. This next guy is Galeris Peffer, who is a shortstop, college player, about to be he's 21 and a half, good leader. I liked the glove, obviously. Really going for the glove here. I don't know that he can play at A-ball right away. I mean, it's, I guess, possible, but we'll kind of see. I mean, I think we probably will push him there just for the experience this season. I think the rookie ball season is about to end, so I think it's likely he goes to A-ball, and that glove looks awesome. This is the big spender. We ended up paying up for Mike Outlaw, a high school pitcher, 6'4" righty, who was committed to Liberty. He wanted $1.1 million, and we ended up offering it to him because we had so much savings from that first-round pick, like I mentioned. We were able to get some interesting guys on the back end. So he was kind of the first one of those guys, wanted $1.1 million. You think he's got plus stuff, like average movement and control. 3 really strong pitches. If the control drops, it's possible he turns into a reliever, but felt like he was worth the risk there. And similarly with our next pick, we went with Mike Hadley, who wanted a bit less. He wanted $700K, and currently those offers are pending. That's why they're not in our org, but we've made offers to them. He wanted $700K. Felt like he was a good bet, 65 stamina, even with the low baseball IQ. I was just kind of intrigued by his pitch mix and their grades, and kind of just liked everything here. Just 18, another high upside selection. We also took on Bo Stone, who's a big lefty corner bat. Really just drafting on the power here. Obviously, the strikeouts are a big risk. OSA sees him a little bit differently than we do, better defense in the outfield, perhaps. We don't necessarily see that, but I just like the idea of taking the University of Virginia commit, big lefty power, good archetype to just have down, and just 17, 6'7", 200, great measurables, kind of a high upside swing here. He is also demanding 650 or 700K, so we kind of went 3 in a row there of overpaying. And then we swooped around and took this guy, which was not demand. He just wanted slot, but Billy Quarles was a catching prospect who definitely is going to strike out a lot and brings good power. He's kind of just intriguing. I felt like his 60 grade potential was too good to leave on the board at this point. I had been staring at him for a while, and I was kind of, just intrigued by him. OSA sees him much differently. They see him being a real strikeout risk, but we think he can turn it around. Even if he doesn't end up sticking at catcher long term, there is outfield flexibility here. Even though he doesn't have great running speed, he'll likely, just play in a corner or something like that. But it's possible, and with the BABIP being so high, you never know. He may just get lucky and luck into a plus contact tool. Although I think that would be quite a long shot for him. But he's interesting to bring on. The last guy we paid up for was this guy, Jeremy Pennington, who, has yet to sign, but we've offered him and we have the money to do so. Kind of similar profile to Russ Meshke, who we took early in the second round. The only difference is he's a little bit less effective in terms of BABIP, has less power in eye, and while I guess on the positive end does bring a lot of defensive versatility with a high baseball IQ. I kind of just liked everything about him at this stage of the draft. I thought I was done overpaying slot value, and then he was kind of the last remaining guy where I was like, well, okay, it'll just be helpful to have him. You never know if he'll like contribute at the majors, but just having this versatility like in our minor league system for the next like 5 or 6 years or whatever, I think it'll be good. So Jeremy Pennington is maybe one of the final interesting guys that we brought on, and then we kind of went on. No, we got this center fielder as well, who has a great arm, great range. Not the best like technical fielder, but felt like just 18 years old. Good wild card to take here with the defense. Jack Weller. Then we went on like a little bit of a reliever spree, and I think these are really the last like interesting guys we got. The back end of the draft was really bad. I'm not even going to show those guys. But we got this college lefty pitcher, Backpack is his nickname, David Ipuk. Throws mid-90s, like good at holding runners, good stamina, not the best control. Fastball slider from the left side is pretty effective, over-the-top release, so he's not a side armor, which I like. And, if the stuff comes along, he ought to be good. He comes from a great competition level, so I liked that about him in the 14th. And then the next guy, Grant Cook, is out of South Carolina. He throws right, less stamina, but better at holding runners. We think his velo is pretty much there. He's like pretty close to his full potential, just needs to bring along the control and movement a little bit, but he's a 3-pitch guy, also great competition level. So 2 interesting relievers there. And then we took 1 high schooler as well, Michael Woodworth, who is just a fastball slider guy, but like his personality, he's definitely really far away. He's just 18, but he's durable, which I like, plus stuff, although it has a long way to go, obviously. But he's probably the last interesting guy we took. Everyone else is just kind of whatever. We took a couple of high upside high school arms late and an outfielder, but if they end up making waves, you will see it further along in the sim. You can see our negotiations here. Everyone we've offered, we accidentally took this guy very late, and he's impossible to sign, so we will not be drafting Phil Threaton, or we will be drafting him, but we will not be signing him. I thought he could play third base for us, but I did not realize he was impossible to sign, so my bad there. But you can see all of our offers totaled up here. If we just hit negotiate on this, you can see we have 7.9 mil in pending offers. I don't really expect anyone to give us any pushback on these, so we'll see if that ends up happening. But we have 7.9 out in market, which is a savings of 2.1 for us on our original 10 mil draft budget. So I've gone in to adjust that. I've lowered the draft budget down to match our current pending offers, so it's 7.9, and that frees up almost $3 million of available money for us to play around with at the trade market, where I think we'll likely look to bring on a couple of bullpen arms or possibly even a 5th starter, like I have mentioned previously. So we're going to start pushing along to that next. I don't know that we're going to get through the full trade deadline in this video, guys. It's kind of gone a little bit long, but I'm thinking a nice place to wrap up would be to finish out these remaining games, get to the All-Star break, and then we can kind of settle in and review the news around here. Then we can, cut the video there, and next video we'll pick right up at the trade deadline and push all the way through August. So let's get rolling here. I'm gonna, finish out this weekend. We've got, let's see if we can complete the sweep against Kansas City, and then we go on the road to Minnesota to finish. So I'll be back at some point during this week to review a bunch of organizational news. Alrighty, guys, let's go ahead and wrap this up. We have simulated up into the 19th here, so we've completed our series against Minnesota and the All-Star break, and I've made a ton of minor league promotions rather across our system that I want to review with you guys. But like in terms of on the field action, we lost the final game in KC, but then bounced back for 2 big wins in Minnesota and then lost the 3rd game. We've sort of readjusted our starting lineup here for the second half. I haven't really touched the batting order yet. I may go in on that before next episode, but I rearranged our starting pitchers to now where we're going to go BB. I mean, obviously he's 15-1. He needs to be our frontline starter. And then we'll go Green, Jones, Burrows, McElroy, kind of like sandwiching Jones in between our strong performers here. And then, to be determined if Finn McElroy ends up like maintaining as our 5 starter, or if we look to address it via trade. It's kind of TBD. And then I think, the bullpen too, we can talk about trade deadline stuff, I guess, a little bit later to close out the video. But the guys are doing good. We're only one game up on St. Louis, which is crazy. They're just right on our tail this whole season, but we've put a good deal of separation between the rest of the division. And, 57 wins is good enough for second best in the MLB. We're still trailing the Yankees. They have 61. They've been on a real hot streak as of late. Our run differential, the Yankees are plus 119, and we are only plus 81. So we've climbed back to plus one above our expected record, so the luck has broken our way a bit, but we're still not so great in like one run and extra inning games. Decent against left-handed pitching and right-handed pitching, not really anything major going on there. League leaders, Lantigua is still batting over 300. Griffin is continuing to rake. Third in the league in OPS. Dan Beebe obviously leading in wins, and he's up there in strikeouts as well, trailing only Paul Skeens in pitcher WAR. But let's review some news that has come across. Of course, since we last left off, we ended up signing a bunch of our prospects, and the only one really everyone pretty much is starting at lower levels. The only one who we ended up pushing aggressively was Tony Granger, and we sent him straight to high A. I was like, I don't want any of this low A, crap. They play fewer games. First off, I want him to get full run, and you look at him, he's a 55 grade at low A, also a 55 grade at high A. I think he can start off there immediately. His first game did not go super great, only walked one, struck out 7, which I love, but kind of got hit around, 8 hits, 5 earned. It's not really sure what ended up happening there. Could just be a weird game, but overall, I think he'll settle in there and be able to perform well. And we can kind of review the full minors in a bit. But everyone else is just pretty much going straight to rookie ball, so no real news to report. And we still have 2 guys outstanding, Russ Meshke and Mike Outlaw, but they're both 18, so they're going to go straight to rookie ball anyway, so it doesn't really matter. In terms of all-star voting, we have a couple guys who received recognition this year. No starters, unfortunately, but you can see the American League rosters here. Don't know that there are any huge surprises here. Scrolling through, looking. No, I think it's all names we know. In the NL, obviously Dan Beebe is going to make it. He did not start the game. That was Yoshinobu Yamamoto. But Dan Beebe makes it. And surprisingly, Jonathan Santucci also makes it. He's pitching great this season. 55 innings at a 2.6, 1.14 whip, striking out 11.5 for 9 for 1.0 WAR. So it looks like our bet on him is paying off, and he's rewarded us with an all-star caliber season. Also making it for the first time, Omar Alfonso, our catcher, who's accumulated 3.1 WAR, has 11 homers. He's been awesome for us, 25 years old, one of the best young catchers in all of baseball. He did not start, however. That went to Ethan Salas. Also making it for us, Termar Johnson, for the second consecutive year, is the third baseman this season. 14 homer, 134 WRC plus 2.7 more. Great year from him. And finally, Connor Griffin makes it in his rookie season. He's hitting 300. He's taking the league by storm. He has 19 homers and 18 steals. Definitely going to be a 2020 guy. We'll see if he can get to 30-30. That would be absurd. 166 WRC plus for a 3.8 WAR. So all in all, that's I think 5 All-Stars for us this year. Definitely team high for us. Which should come as no surprise. This is the best team we've ever fielded so far in the sim. As far as prospects go, though, we don't really have too much to show here. You can kind of scroll through and pause if you want to read the AL there. In the NL, our only recognized prospect is actually outfielder Ben Small. So he gets in there. He's had a great season at A-ball, but no other guys here. So no Danny Jimenez, no Phil Goodall, no pitching recognition either. So just the one guy, a little bit boring. You can see Travis Martin here as well, the catcher we were considering, keeping close tabs on him. He's in the Atlanta organization. But no, like, big standouts for us, like, in the game itself. I don't even think we got a hit, but Aaron Judge did win the home run derby. Looks like he overtook Sebastian Walcott, who is just an insane player. And the AL also wins the All-Star game as well. So that's it as far as, like, major league stuff that has happened. I wanted to run through notable promotions across the minor leagues, and we can just start because the rookie ball season has wrapped. So now we just have, like, this is just like the waiting lobby for players next year. None of these guys are ready to compete at A-ball yet. They're just kind of sitting here. So we'll just go up the ladder here. We'll start at A-ball. So we've pushed Paul Waldron here, our catcher, 5th round pick in 2027. Felt like he had a decent season at rookie ball, 118 WRC plus, pretty good defensively. Just kind of wanted to let him continue to get at bats here as we close out the year. Dave Vigil is another player that maybe we haven't really talked on, but he's been in the DSL for us for a while. And he was just a scouting discovery, kind of a first base, but really more of a DH, if we're being honest. He's OPS'd over 1,000 the last 2 seasons, in his final year in the DSL and his first year at rookie ball. So we feel like, he's a little interesting. He's 20, 20 and a half, projects as a good contact guy. So we're giving him the push. And a couple of our other guys here, I don't know that anyone is too exciting. Like, obviously, some of these outfielders, we have like a ton in the system. Seth Weinberger is probably the highest ceiling guy at a 60 potential. He's an 11th round pick in 2027, so kind of an underdog story here. Likely a corner outfielder, but he OPS'd over 1,000 in his rookie ball season this year. He's only been with us for 2 seasons now. But 2.1 WAR, just turned 20 years old. Really love what he's doing for us. And, there are other guys here as well, like Matt Hucks, Cale Simmerman, I believe, also got the push. And Daniel Brown, I want to say, also got the push. He was our 6th round pick in 2027. 135 WRC plus in rookie ball this year. Wanted to reward that here with A-ball run. On the pitching front, I don't know that there are any major promotions here. We did, bring up 4 guys, like a couple bullpen arms, Bill Zimmerman, Melvin Salazar, David Garcia, but I don't know that any of them are truly noteworthy. Stan Blackmore is an 18th round pick in 2027. We're bringing him up after a good season at rookie ball, but nothing too exciting here in terms of pitching. If we go to high A, however, there are some notable additions here. Obviously, Tony Granger, like we mentioned, is here, but also we've promoted Brian Hiles, our 4th round pick in 2027. He is, I believe, a top 200 prospect, maybe closer to the back end, but he has really good stamina, righty. We drafted him right out of high school, and he's been great in his first season at rookie ball, and then this year in A-ball at just the plain A level, 3.3 ERA, 1.28 whip, both positive, like ERA plus and FIP minus. Felt really good about bringing him up with the strikeout minus walk at 20%. He could honestly turn into something for us long term. I know the profile kind of looks a little uninspiring, but it could also just be that he's yet to kind of uncover all of that potential, because at one point, we viewed him as a 55 grade guy. So I still think there's a little more in the tank with him. I'm excited to continue to push him higher. He's almost 21. And then there are a couple of relievers as well, but I don't think anyone super noteworthy here that we need to address. In terms of lineups, however, we're pushing up our catcher, Zach Hammer, who was our 13th round pick in 2028 last season. He had a really good year. We gave him an A-ball push last season. He kind of just got his feet wet there, nothing too much to report. But then this year, in kind of a bigger sample of 70 games, was just pretty much average. But you feel like with his defense, he was a 1.4 WAR player. Like with his defense, and he's like 22 and a half. Like he needs to get pushed up a little more aggressively. I felt like he could handle high A. And then we've also promoted Trevor Wonderly here, our 3rd round pick last season. He he didn't really have all that great of a year in A-ball, but, he's 23, almost 24. You think he can bring a little bit defensively at second base, so hopefully he can turn it around. And then our two outfielders, they're kind of linked at the hip. We've got Ben Small and Phil Goodall up here. Both of them had really good years at A-ball like in the early part of the year, the first half. So Phil Goodall, OPS 800, 1.8 WAR, and obviously he's an insane defensive talent in the outfield. He's going to track down everything at 6'4", 200. And then Ben Small, we've addressed previously, but 126 WRC plus, hit 12 homers, 19 doubles. Felt like he could handle high A at just 19. So really two exciting outfielders to have up here at the high A level. And you may be wondering about our dear Quentin Young. Unfortunately, look at how far our boy has fallen here. He is down to just a 40 potential now and is really not producing at the high A level whatsoever. He's yet to be like a positive hitter like in pretty much any season that we've had him. He's been average a couple of years and then likely like every other year just very below average. So we kind of got Elijah Greened here, like just blinded by the tools, I think. I don't know that he will ever amount to anything for us. It's just a tremendous fall from grace. At one point we viewed him as a 60, 65 potential guy when we drafted him. And then, now at just a 40, it's really tough to imagine him ever factoring for us. The former 6th overall pick is likely a bust. So really unfortunate there. But those are all the promotions to high A. Double A, again, not a ton going on here. Alex Harrington is going to remain here. He's had a really good season from a WAR perspective, and obviously he brings a lot of defense. If we look at his ratings relative to the league, we still think there's a little more contact and power for him to tap into down here. I just didn't want to call him up to AAA because the bat isn't fully there yet. If it was closer to a league average bat, I could be convinced, but I think we're just going to give him the rest of the year here in AA. Maybe next year he starts at AAA and possibly gets called up to the majors shortly after, but he's also sort of regressed. I don't know that he ever will factor for us. He may just be like a backup defender ultimately, which would kind of stink considering the draft capital we used to bring him in, but who knows, I guess, how he'll develop with our coaching and everything. I'm still pretty optimistic on him, but didn't feel like he deserved the call-up just yet, and I'm looking through here at like other names. The only guy I think notable is Jacob Parker, who at the high A level had a 980 OPS, 133 WRC plus. He's really kind of come along now, almost 23. He's, of course, the twin brother of JoJo Parker, who maybe we should check in on and see what he's up to. But it kind of took Jacob a long time to come online for us. He kind of had a very sluggish start, but really ever since last year, 2028, he sort of hit the ground running and managed to climb from rookie ball to through the A-ball levels now, sitting at AA. Corner outfield, first base versatility, pretty good clubhouse leader. Kind of like what he offers. So we'll see if he ever turns into anything for us. But pitching wise here, AA, again, I don't think there are too many notable moves. We've actually bumped some guys down who are struggling. Bubba Chandler, Tyson Neighbors, and Kevin Jax will all get bumped down from AAA to AA here. And I really don't think there's too much to mention as far as pitching goes at this level. So we'll jump straight up to AAA. And I guess the major mover here we have a couple bullpen guys, but Ben Cleaver, you'll remember we traded Jacob Melton, and Jaden Woods in this most recent offseason to Philly in exchange for Ben Cleaver, who was Rule 5 eligible at the time, and he is a former, he's a fourth-round pick out of University of Kentucky back in 2026. So he had a really good year at AA. Kind of just average in terms of VRA plus FIP minus, but the FIP is good, and he wasn't really walking too many guys or giving up the homer, so felt like at 24 he could play up here at AAA. And then there's this interesting closer, guys, Carlos Mateo. He's sort of like come out of nowhere for me, but I'm looking at his profile and I'm like, oh my gosh, we could work this in, 35 stamina, throws potentially 100 plus, devastating fastball slider combo with a changeup as well. So, he can pitch to left-handed batters as well. He's only 23, like 23 and a half, 23 and 2/3. The control may never be there, but that's why he's in the bullpen. He had a great season at Double-A, 33 games, 19 saves, 24% strikeout minus walk, was just crushing it down there. And I don't really know where he came from. He's just, I think, a real-life IFA signing. Yeah, 2023. So it's potential he turns into something for us. I mean, I wouldn't put it past him to, compete for a roster spot next season if he's able to, continue to tap into his strikeout upside. So he's kind of exciting, but I don't think there's any other noteworthy mentions here. From a lineup perspective, similar, like we've made two big additions, I want to say. First, Edward Florentino, who is, 22, almost 23, also a real like IFA signing guy. You kind of like what this profile brings. He's a lefty batter. He's sort of, again, corner, outfield, first base type, fly ball hitter, pull hitter, 2 years in Double-A. Well, really like kind of one year in the aggregate at Double-A. Really struggled last season, but this year had a 124 WRC plus, OPS to 880, hit 14 homers. So his ratings relative to the league, he looks like he ought to be pretty good here. Still a ton of room to grow into more power. And a very similar player, Nolan Stevens, our 8th round pick in 2026 out of Mississippi State, is now 24 years old. Very similar in the sense that he's corner outfield, first base, and he doesn't really bring much defensively, so he's more of a first base DH type. But he's pretty far along, you guys. He could, be a September call-up or something like that, or definitely compete for a roster spot next season as a lefty power threat, maybe off the bench or something. But OPS 883 in Double-A this season, 123 WRC plus. Similarly, you look at his ratings relative to the league, and you think he can be really effective, a little more power and eye to grow into, but a good clubhouse leader, well respected by his teammates. Love everything he brings. But those are, I think, all the major moves. We have, obviously a very strong system overall that I think we may look to cash in on in the next episode. We're going to leave this one here. Just doing the draft and the All-Star break, I think it takes up a lot of time, so I don't want to make this one super long. But in the next video, I think we'll look to attack the trade deadline and work all the way through August probably, and then kind of set ourselves up for a stretch run where we do our September call-ups and see how the season ends in the following video. But I think it's likely we look to, like I mentioned, cash in on some of our prospects at this trade deadline. We have a decent amount of money available to us. We have 3.2 mil, and there are definitely some interesting relievers on the block. I think that's where I want to attack here. I think I want to bump Brian Abreu out of the closer role, maybe down to another setup role. We can send Olivares down, and then maybe we acquire a rental closer. There are several strong relievers on market right now. Class A, I think, makes too much money for us to go after, but I think Edwin Diaz from Cleveland and even Cade Smith from Cincinnati. I usually don't like doing interdivisional trades, but they are so far out of it, and I guess more recently in real life they traded for Ke'Bryan Hayes from the Pirates, so that's sort of they're willing to do business in real life. I'm willing to do business in the game as well. They would both just be rental players, so I don't know that we would be able to retain them long term, but I think they would help us compete this season if we wanted to, attack like a higher profile arm, and I don't think they would be all that expensive either, just because, like I mentioned, they're rental players, so we could likely just include a couple mid-tier prospects and get them. And then there are other guys down here as well. Like, I'm sort of interested in a certain player down here, Dre Jameson, I noticed from the White Sox. They're really struggling this year, and he has like a sub-2 ERA, sub-1 whip. Looks really good, very cheap as well, so we could even look to bring him on possibly as well. But that's all stuff to look forward to in the next episode. I would be curious your thoughts on the draft. How do you think we did? Are you happy with the picks we made? Who are you most excited about in the class? Let me know in the comments down below. But otherwise, I will see you in the next video very soon. As always, I appreciate you for watching. Take it easy, guys. I'll be back with a new video for you tomorrow. Thanks.